Good morning. This is Holly Lehan and Carol Emmy, the Graduate Nursing Advisors. I want to take time to thank you for listening to this webinar. Okay, a few housekeeping items for those of you that may be listening to this webinar live. You can type in your questions via the questions box on the dashboard at any point during the webinar presentation. If you are listening to a recorded version of the webinar, please know that any questions you may have, you can send to gradnursing@tesu.edu. So the goal of the webinar, purpose of the webinar, is to familiarize yourself with the final capstone courses in the MSN program and to discuss the process for declaring for these practicums. We're going to explain the guidelines, requirements, and expectations, and clarify how to successfully navigate the approval process. Upon successful completion of your final capstone courses, you are expecting to be awarded a master's degree in your specialty area of practice. In order to do that, we in the School of Nursing are carefully assessing your ability to demonstrate best practices and your clinical application of your theory, as well as your approach to articulating it. So the reason essentially for this webinar is to clarify what you need to do so that you're not saying you didn't know. The best advice is to take a look at the practicum packet, which I will show you today as well, and where it's located if you haven't seen it already. We encourage you to read the entire practicum packet early and often, all right, and don't wait to the last minute. Please keep in mind that throughout the practicum process, we are expecting you to submit professional documents. Please submit the required forms by the posted deadline. Please do so with attention to detail. So think about your writing, your grammar, your punctuation. Some of these forms do go to the mentor that will be facilitating the online portion of the practicum course. So you do want to make sure what you're submitting is appropriate for your mentor to see. So keep in mind, professional writing. Submitting the forms does not guarantee approval of your practicum site, your preceptor, or your activities. You will receive a screening sheet back from myself or from Carol indicating approval of your site or your preceptor or your activities, or we'll note what revisions need to be made. Now, it is important that you work with your advisor regarding your practicum planning in terms of when you plan to do the practicum and what terms. The practicums are not offered every term, so you want to make sure that you're aligning your courses at the appropriate times throughout the year. The Nurse Educator Practicum, we run it 2 times. You can start it in October and follow the second course, 750, in January, so that's a full 6 months. Or you can start it in January and then do the second piece in April, again, a consecutive 6 months. The January-April term has an asterisk there because, again, you need to speak with your advisor concerning doing your practicum during this term. And the reason for that is because Thomas Edison does not run on a traditional schedule that we essentially run all year long. A lot of academic institutions do not, so they might finish their courses in early May. And because of this, the site you pick might not really fall in line and you would not be able to complete the hours needed. So you do need to work with your advisor to make sure you're selecting a site that would be appropriate and allow you to get the hours needed throughout the entire 6 months. Keeping in mind the April term runs all the way until the end of June, so you do need a facility that can accommodate you that entire time frame. Nursing informatics, again, we run it, you can start it 2 times a year. You can start it in April and run into the end of the July term. You can start it in October and run until the end of January. Nursing administration is the opposite of that. It runs starting in January, and then it also starts again in July. Okay. And we highly recommend that you keep in touch with us, obviously prior to starting the practicum process, to clarify any questions that you might have. But we do ask that you make an appointment with us at least 60 days before you begin the process. If you've been in touch with one of us throughout your program here, then that's the advisor you should make the appointment with. If you haven't been in touch with anyone, you can make an appointment with either one of us, and then we'll make sure you're on the right track. Or you can always email them to Grad Nursing as well to find out who your assigned advisor is. I'm going to go through a summary of the forms that are due throughout the process. Please keep in mind that some of these are for nurse educator students only, which we've indicated in the table. But first things first, in terms of the Part A form, that's what we call the intent to register form. That is the first form that we receive, which notifies us that you're planning to start your practicum. Okay. There's a lot of demographic information on the form, as well as the practicum site that you've selected, as well as the preceptor. You must also attach resumes or CVs for yourself, as well as the preceptor. And we do ask for you to identify a facility contact person at the site you've chosen. The facility contact person is probably not the preceptor, but your preceptor should know who is. Okay, the facility contact person is the person responsible for handling agreements that are needed between Thomas Edison and the site that you've selected. If you're a local student to New Jersey area, there's a good chance we might already have an agreement in place, but we still need that facility contact person so we can verify that we do and that it's current. Okay. For the Part C, the direct care experience, again, please note that this is for nurse educator students only. The direct care experience is a separate requirement for nurse educator students, and it relates to the direct care only. So for students that are doing the nurse educator program, you'll see that when you get to the practicum requirements, you'll have a number of hours that are related to teaching either nurses in like a staff development type setting or teaching nursing students in an academic setting. In addition to that, you have 30 hours each term of the direct care experience, and that is essentially 30 hours that you'll be spending teaching patients. For some students, they can use the same preceptor in the same site to accomplish both. For instance, if you were using a unit-based nurse educator, there is a chance that you could use that same person. Otherwise, you might have to find a secondary preceptor at your site. And we'll go over that a little bit more in detail later on. In addition, there's a delineation of responsibilities form. There's one particular just for the direct care hours, so this would only be submitted by nurse educator students, and it is a legal agreement that must be signed by yourself and the preceptor. And then there's also a delineation of responsibilities form for all students that's not related to the direct care, that's related to your primary practicum experience as well. And again, that's a legal agreement that must be signed by your preceptor and yourself. Lastly, the Part B project proposal. This is due 3 months before you're ready to start your practicum. And I'll get into this a little bit more as we go on with the webinar, but it does identify and describe an intended practicum project. And essentially, this is a project that you're going to talk about with your preceptor and make sure that it's a project that meets the facility's needs as well as your own. I'm going to do now is just take you to our website, so where you can see the forms and where they're located. So, all right, so here we're just on the home page of the university's website. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see there's a Visit Our School section. You can click right onto the W. Carey Edwards School of Nursing, or you can click right here where it says MSN. Okay, that's going to take you to the MSN page. And on the left side, you'll see that we have several tabs. And you'll want to go to the Practicum Preparation tab. Okay, and here you'll find all of the practicum forms that need to be completed. Right here we have Part A. We have Part C, which again is only for nurse educator students, and then the Part B project proposal form. Within this first paragraph, you'll see there's the link to the practicum packet. As I said before, you want to make sure you open that up. It's going to open up as a PDF file. There you go. So make sure that you print it, and you'll also want to make sure that you print or send your preceptor a copy as well. It contains a lot of good information, guidelines, hour requirements, a timeline, which I'll show you as well. So it really it can help. You're going to be referring back to this document quite a few times. And then to show you the Part A form as an example, all the forms are electronic, okay? So there won't be any printing needed. You can essentially just click through the boxes and enter your information, okay, your university ID, your email, and so forth, so on. Please note that all of the boxes are required. So you can't submit the form until everything is filled in. So if you get an error message, just go back and make sure that everything's been filled in. It's asking for your specialty, your current job, title, and employer. Here, you'll have the box where you can upload your resume. Okay, and then as you move down, you'll also see that there's another option to upload your preceptor's resume as well. Keep in mind, in order to declare for your practicum, you do need to have an updated Google version 2 portfolio, or you might hear myself or Carol refer to it as the Google MSN portfolio. This was the second version, which is why we sometimes call it version 2. And we will, when you declare for your practicum, we do go into the Google site and make sure that you have an updated e-portfolio. Also within the Part A form, we ask to address conflict of interest. Okay, your practicum cannot be completed at your place of employment. It can be completed within the same health system though. So just keep in mind, even though you might have to answer yes to some of these questions, it does not mean that the preceptor or site are not appropriate, but it does make us, make sure that you don't really have any type of relationship, especially a reporting relationship with the person that you've selected to be your preceptor. There's also the facility information, as I mentioned. And down here, this refers to nurse educator students. So for nurse educator students, if you've selected to go to an academic institution, let's say, Mercer County Community College, and then your preceptor also asks you to go to Capitol Health for the student's clinical rotation, so you can also be helping to educate them in the clinical setting, you would need to select yes for this question. Okay, so that's essentially what it's asking. Will you be going with your preceptor to a clinical facility? When you click yes, additional information will open and will ask you to list that information as well. So in this box, you would then list Capitol Health and the appropriate information. The reason for this is because we do need 2 different agreements. We need to make sure we have a current agreement with Mercer County Community College and then also an agreement with Capitol Health. Sometimes 6 months before, preceptors are not aware if they're going to a clinical facility as of yet, just because the assignments have not been made. That's okay, but as soon as you find out from your preceptor that that is going to happen, you need to notify myself or Carol to make sure that we have an agreement in place. Okay, in addition, you'll see that the Part B form is related to the project proposal. Part C, again, this is for nurse educator students only, and it very closely mimics what was on the Part A form. Once you've filled all the information in, you're going to go ahead and hit submit. You will get an electronic receipt in your email letting you know that it was submitted, and all of your answers, all the information you provided are listed on that receipt for you. So just know that if you did not receive a receipt, chances are we did not receive your form. So you can always check with your advisor to see if we got it, but you want to make sure you check your junk email box in case it went there. But you will get a nice little receipt with a summary of all of your information that was submitted to the school. Okay. So this is the current practicum timeline that we have provided for you. This, again, is very similar to what's listed in the practicum packet. Okay, and it is really just to keep you on track, hopefully, and have you to adhere to these deadlines. So over here on the left-hand side, you have the terms listed out, depending on which term you intend to start your practicum, and then it gives you a timeline of what needs to be submitted and when. So we do recommend that you attend the webinar and speak with your advisor at least 9 months before the start of your practicum. Again, just to answer any questions, clarify any requirements that you might need. So that way, if you haven't started looking for a preceptor or a facility at that point, we can kind of guide you or give you suggestions. All right, 6 months before you intend to start your practicum is when we expect to receive your Part A form. So that's basically telling us where and who you're going with for your 6 months of your practicum experience. Likewise, if you're a nurse educator student, the Part C form is also due 6 months before. Okay, and that includes the Part C form, the resumes, just like the Part A, and in addition, you'll be submitting the delineation of responsibilities form assigned by your direct care preceptor. Okay, at that point, once we receive your forms, it's usually a few weeks for us to review them, take a look at the resumes, and you will be notified by your nursing advisor if your placement and your preceptor have been approved in this time frame. Okay. With that, once you get the approval from your advisor saying that your site and your preceptor are appropriate, you can then begin working on your Complio requirements. And we're going to go over these in detail in a few minutes. But Complio refers to all of the health and safety requirements, vaccines, background checks, so forth. All of that information is due 4 months before. So in this case, if we're following the July track, these would be due March 1st, along with an update of your e-portfolio with your most current documents, also due 4 months before. So around that deadline, your advisor will go into your e-portfolio, make sure that you've been keeping up with your documents, and that you've added everything that you can at that point. We are aware that you may have another course or two outstanding in addition to the practicum courses, but we want to make sure that you're making progress with your e-portfolio. And then lastly, 3 months before your practicum start, you are required to submit the Part B project proposal form and your delineation of responsibilities form as well. Okay. And again, as your advisors, we're in constant contact with you. So we're letting you know when things are approved. If you're missing deadlines, we're in contact with you, reminding you that things were due. If it gets to the point where you have missed several deadlines or you just haven't submitted what needs to be submitted, there is a chance that your practicum would need to be delayed. The reason we have these deadlines in place, and they are so far ahead of time, is that we do need to make sure agreements are in place. Many facilities require what they call attestation forms. We're basically telling them that you're good to go, that you've been cleared on all fronts. And if you're behind with your deadlines, we can't send those forms that are required. And a lot of times the facilities have certain deadlines set for those. And if we miss them, you can no longer be placed at that facility. Okay, so just some tips for completing the Part A form. Please make sure you're using correct titles for your preceptor and that you have complete information for contacts for the affiliation agreements. So phone numbers and email, double check those emails to make sure that they're correct, because if we get a bounce back, we will be in contact with you to clarify. Okay, make sure your resume is current. And then if you anticipate any type of special needs accommodations, this would be the time that you would want to contact the ADA office. And then you can work with the ADA office to determine what needs to be done, what documents might need to be filed. All right, a couple of resume CV tips. Please make sure that you're following the sample template. If you haven't updated your resume in a while, you want to make sure that you follow the sample template. And we do have one, again, I'll show you the web page. Okay, right down on here under additional requirements and resources, we have two samples. We have a sample resume and a sample CV. If you are our BSN student, there's a good chance that you saw these samples before, but we do suggest following them if you don't have an updated resume prior to submitting it to us. Okay. Please keep in mind that with a resume or CV, you want to list your education immediately after your demographic information and your goal or objective. Please keep in mind, this is the last bullet down here. You want to make sure you've listed the correct title of the institution. So Thomas Edison State University. So if you haven't updated your resume in a while, you might still have State College there. So please make sure that you have that listed. In addition, pay attention to the proper titling of your degree. Okay, it's a Master of Science in Nursing, an MSN. Okay, that should be what is listed on your resume. After you list your degree, you can then list your specialty. So whether it's a specialty in education, a specialty in administration, keep in mind it's not a Master of Science in Nursing Education or a Master's of Science in Administration. Okay, so we do look for that, so we would have you revise that as well. As far as the direct care experience, this was a newer requirement, I think, put into place about 2 years ago. Okay, and the reason for this, it is an accreditation requirement from the or recommendation from the AACN. Okay, the purpose of the direct care experience is for the student to develop mastery of patient care delivery skills, as well as system assessment and intervention skills. So in order to meet this requirement, the School of Nursing put in place that nurse educator students must complete at least 30 hours or 30 hours per term. So it's a total of 60 hours over the entire 6 months. You will be using the same direct care preceptor as well as the same site or the same facility. Hours are met by teaching clients, patients, residents, not by teaching nurses or nursing students. So it is a separate focus. And the focus is on the opportunity to develop and enhance in-depth knowledge in a particular area of nursing. You will be completing a direct care log to identify how you met the 30 hours each term, an evaluation tool, and a narrative reflection at the end. We have several sites, examples of sites and activities that you can be doing to meet those direct care hours. They are listed in the practicum packet. And keep in mind that it is a nurse educator role. It's not a nurse practitioner role, so we don't expect you to be doing any type of invasive procedures or administering medications or prescribing medications. You're really there to educate the patient. So things like discharge instructions, medication reconciliation. We've had students lead group therapy. So there's a lot of different activities that you can be doing at a master's level to meet these direct care hour requirements. And as I mentioned before, direct care experience may require students to select a second preceptor or site. So again, if you've selected an academic setting and working with a faculty member, they typically don't have direct access to patients, right? They're an academic facility. So you might have to seek out, a hospital setting, long-term care, where you can work with an MSN prepared preceptor that does work with patients on a daily basis. Okay. Just a few reminders, your practicum site cannot be your place of employment. Again, it can be within a health system if you work for a health system that has multiple campuses, but there still cannot be any type of reporting relationship between the preceptor you selected and your current role as an employee. You will be answerable for conflict of interest should we think that there's any type of relationship between you and the preceptor. And then if your place of employment is within the same health system, students are still required to fulfill university requirements. So that does not make you exempt from any type of background check, health requirements. You still need to go through the entire process, even if you're an employee of that health system. Okay. As far as choosing your preceptor, they do need to have an MSN, a Master of Science in Nursing degree. They have to have a minimum of 2 years experience in the specialty in which he or she is precepting you. They have to be licensed and credentials appropriate to the state where you're completing your practicum. It's not a requirement, but we suggest you try to find a preceptor that has experience precepting graduate level nurses. A lot of times this just provides a better experience for you as a student if you're working with a preceptor who's done it before. And lastly, you're looking for a good fit. So you will be with this person completing a number of hours over a 6-month time frame. So you want to consider their professional style, their management style, and make sure that you feel comfortable with them as well. How do I locate a preceptor? That's probably one of the most common questions that Carol and I receive. So if you work for a larger health system with multiple campuses, start with your staff education department or even your unit manager. There's a chance that they know which MSN prepared nurses have precepted staff before, or they have colleagues at the other institutions that could assist you as well. Network, of course, if you belong to any professional organizations, critical care, emergency room, so forth and so on. There's a good chance, again, that if you do an outreach within that organization, there might be some colleagues that could assist you. Same thing if you're part of the alumni at whatever institution you completed your BSN. If you've kind of used those resources and still haven't found anyone, you can reach out to the sites that you're interested in going to. So if there's a particular school of nursing, whether it be a diploma program or an associate degree, if there's a nursing home or hospital of interest to you, then we suggest composing a professional email and sending it to the facilities. Typically, the place that you want to reach out to would be the staff education professional development department within the hospital. So a lot of times if you check the hospital's website and look in the nursing section, you can locate the correct email. Carol and I can assist you. You can ask us for suggestions or contact information. So we will give you, sites, preceptors that we've used in the past. Again, it's not a guarantee that they'll precept you, but the fact that we've used them before, they're familiar with our students, there's a good chance they or one of their colleagues would be willing to precept you as well. And then keep in mind, and this list is starting to grow, there are certain facilities that require us, the school, to reach out on your behalf. Virtua Health requires that. St. Joseph's Medical Center requires that. Capital Health does as well if you're not an employee. So just keep that in mind. Again, this is something that you want to talk about with your advisor when you have those advisement appointments. So you should, once you have confirmation that you have a preceptor and that you have someone willing to work with you over the 6 months, we strongly encourage you to initiate a face-to-face meeting. Okay, and in that meeting, you should ask the preceptor what types of requirements are in place at that facility. As I mentioned, there are a lot of times now these facilities have student clearance forms, or they call attestation forms. Your preceptor should know if those are required. And that, a lot of times that form has to be given to us, to your advisor to complete. But we want to make sure we know what's required of you and of us prior to the practicum starting. You want to make sure you bring copies of the practicum packet, the syllabus, which we can send you if you'd like, and then all the forms. So the delineation of responsibilities form as well as the project proposal form. So the preceptor can see what needs to be submitted prior to the start of your practicum. We also have a preceptor webinar. So your preceptor will receive an invitation from us prior to the term that you're starting. We usually do it a few weeks before the practicum term begins. We try to keep it to about 30 minutes where we discuss the practicum expectations, requirements, and things like that. Okay. While you're there with all of those forms, you also want to discuss any type of facility orientation. So a lot of facilities now have e-modules that need to be completed prior to starting, documents that need to be completed. You want to make sure you discuss your goals for the practicum as well as any type of potential projects that you can be working on. Guidelines for your hour requirements. In the practicum packet, it shows you how many hours and the categories that different hours fall into, different activities that qualify. So make sure that you review those with your preceptor, because not all of your hours can be sitting in meetings with your preceptor. You need to be working on that project that you're identifying. You need to be doing those direct care hours if you're a nurse educator. So you want to make sure that you're both on the same page with how the practicum is going to be completed. In addition, talk about your schedules. Make sure that the preceptor has enough time for you, to schedule those 100 to 150 hours needed each term. And if there's certain days that the preceptor works and doesn't work, and how that might conflict with your current schedule, with your work schedule, your family life, and things like that. In addition, the mentor, the preceptor, and yourself will be having 2 to 3 conference calls per term. So the mentor will initiate these conference calls with you. Sometimes the mentor will want to have a conference call with just you, and other times then they'll also include the preceptor. And then, again, this is just a way to keep everyone on the same page and make sure that your practicum is progressing. Make sure that you have a preferred form of communication and your availability as well. So, some preceptors prefer email, some prefer phone, some prefer text. So just make sure that whatever you're doing is with what the preceptor prefers, and that you're, again, contact them in a professional manner. Okay, so for Part B, your project proposal form, this is the last form that comes into us. It's due 3 months prior to the start of your practicum. It also includes, again, a question about whether student clearance or attestation form is required. So again, if you haven't talked to your preceptor about it, or maybe your preceptor didn't know when you originally asked, make sure you ask them again prior to submitting this form. But the project proposal requires that you discuss project ideas with your preceptor that are in line with your goals and the facility strategic plan. You also want to be familiar with the MSN program outcomes and your specialty competencies. So there's competencies for administration, there's competencies for informatics, and there's competencies for the nurse educator program. They are listed in the handbook, which is available for you online through the website as well. So those specialty competencies are what you need to meet by the end of the practicum, at the end of the 6 months. So you want to make sure that you and your preceptor are selecting a project that can help you demonstrate meeting those competencies. Once you submit the Part B form, we take a look at it. We make sure that it's professionally written. It's a professional proposal. But it is not up to us. What we, myself and Carol, do is we send it off to the mentor who will be facilitating the online portion of the practicum course. And then the mentor will let us know if they feel the project has merit and that it could be something that you could work on for 6 months. They'll give us feedback. If they give us feedback, we'll pass it on to you for sure. If anything needs to be revised, we'll pass that on as well. But a lot of times the mentors will give suggestions of it's a good project, but think about this, this, and this. And if that's the case, we'll let you know that your project proposal is approved, but to consider these recommendations as well as you move forward with your project once you're in the practicum setting. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and show you the Part B form. Okay, so here again, on the same web page we were on before, you'll see there's a complete and submit Part B project proposal form. Just taking a minute to load here. Okay, so again, it's due 3 months, 12 weeks prior to the term they're taking it. Okay, there is a clinical attestation form question here. You've reviewed the facility requirements with the preceptor, so did you ask about how you're going to park, or where do you park, your ID badge, those types of things. And then here's the breakdown of the project itself. So the project idea includes what you state to intend to do with the project. There's an analysis section with several parts. So state the needs that are known or are to be assessed, the anticipated human and financial resources, as well as the barriers and benefits of the project to the organization. So when you're completing this, please make sure that you address all of those different areas. There's also a question related to the deliverable. So the deliverable is basically what you're leaving with the organization. So perhaps you developed different competency modules. Perhaps you developed within the RN residency program, you developed some type of curriculum or concepts that you covered. Perhaps you did some type of survey for the nurses if you're administration, or you did some type of budgeting. Whatever that you did that you're leaving with the organization and the information that they can use from the project to continue the project while you're gone is what would go in this box. And then lastly, you're going to identify 3 goals, and I describe how the project meets the goals and the appropriate competencies based on your specialty. Okay. Lastly, down here, you'll see there's the place to upload your delineation form, and then you can go ahead and submit it, and we're able to receive all of those documents. Okay. So again, writing your goals that are required for that Part B form, they must be properly formatted and written using scholarly language. Okay. If you're having some trouble formulating those goals, using the MSN outcomes or referring to your specialties, it can be very helpful, and they are found on page 8 and 9 of the Nursing Student Handbook, which is available to you on the website as well. You want to make sure your goals are SMART, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. Okay, so you want to make sure whatever you're taking on for the 6 months will last the entire 6 months, and so that way you have enough to kind of, implement the project or do your needs assessment, implement the project, and then do an evaluation as well. So examples of verbs and practicum goals. Okay, so one thing Carol and I are always telling our students, this is not an observation experience. You're not there to, watch what your preceptor does or see what a nursing administrator or nursing informaticist does. You're there to get your, hands in, learn how to manage a project in your specialty. So words like observe, describe, learn, understand, we will ask you to revise them. And at this point, you've learned what you've needed to learn in your theory courses, depending on your specialty. So at this point, it's really the point in time where you have to put them into practice. So we want to see verbs like demonstrate, develop, analyze. So you're really ready to be the project manager of whatever project you've selected. Okay. As I showed you on the website, these are the different sections of the project proposal. Okay, and I do think students probably struggle the most with the deliverable section. So if you need any assistance with that, feel free to reach out to your advisor. But it's really kind of the enduring material, so that if whatever project you developed, if the organization chose to and they wanted to continue your project, they would be able to use that information that you're leaving with them to continue it. So whatever it might be, whether it was a curriculum developed, whether it was a workflow that you did if you were an informatics student, that's essentially what makes up your deliverable. Okay, so as far as the MSN health and safety requirements, all right, so you'll hear Carol and I refer to them as the Complio requirements. And Complio essentially is the company we use that verifies the information you're submitting is accurate. Okay, so all MSN students are required to complete a background check, a drug screen, immunization screening, as well as FBI fingerprinting. That last bullet related to FBI fingerprinting can be done through Complio, or it can be done through a separate company called FieldPrint, and I will cover both of those for you. Once you receive your screening form back from your advisor related to your Part A form, so you've told us where you're going and who you're going with, and we've said, okay, this looks great, this is approved, I then encourage my students to set their Complio account up right away. Okay, so you're going to use this website, tesunursingbackground.com, and that's where you're going to go to create your Complio account. And again, that's right on the practicum preparation page for you. Okay, it's listed at the bottom under additional requirements and resources. you'll see that the Complio link is right here. So you'll want to go ahead, go there, and then you'll set up your account with your username and password. Okay. Once you've selected a username and password, it's going to ask you to pick a package. So you want to make sure you'll already be identified as a Thomas Edison State University student when you put in your demographic information. And then when it gets to the select program option, you want to make sure you choose MSN. Okay, and that's going to give you the correct options to choose from. Okay. So from there, you want to make sure then you select this radio button that says Tracking and Screening Bundle for all new students. Once you select that button, what that does, it gives you three things. It gives you the immunization tracking for 20 months, it gives you the background check, and it gives you the drug screen. So that bundle is including all three things, and you need all three things, so you do want to select that Tracking and Screening Bundle. Okay? Oops, sorry about that. The bottom, the screening option, is where you have the choice. As I mentioned, FBI fingerprinting can be done through Complio, and if you would like to do it through Complio, you then, in addition to selecting the bundle, you also then need to select this checkbox for $79 additional. And then at that point, you can check out, you would pay your money to Complio, and then they would give you access to all of these things to begin the process of uploading your requirements. If you decide to do your fingerprints through FieldPrint, which is a different company, you still need to go into Complio, you still need to select the radio button for this screening bundle, but then you do not need to check this box. You would then proceed right to FieldPrint's website and order your fingerprints through them. So if you have any questions about which one to choose or you're unsure of which ones to choose, please speak with your advisor. We definitely do not want you paying twice for the fingerprints. So if you choose to do them through Complio and pay the $79, then we're going to guide you and answer your questions about Complio. We don't want you paying at Complio and FieldPrint. Okay, so what's the difference? So if you're doing your fingerprinting with Complio, once you order your fingerprint package, Complio will send you fingerprinting cards. Okay, it's usually actually by email. You print them out. You go to your local police department or a local agency that will roll your fingerprints, ink roll, onto the fingerprint cards. There's also some additional information, demographic information that you have to complete, and then you will mail those cards back to American Data Bank. American Data Bank takes them, and they're processed in about 2 to 5 business days through American Data Bank and the FBI. American Data Bank is kind of a subset of Complio. Okay. American Data Bank will email you a copy of the results, and they upload them to Complio for you. So they'll be located in your account once the results are processed. If you decide to do fingerprinting with FieldPrint, essentially the difference is that they're live scans. So FieldPrint, like I said, is an additional option. They're a nationwide company, and you can check on their website there and find a location near you. It will require you to put in your zip code, and it will give you a listing. You would make an appointment. You would go at your appointment day and time. You'd have your fingerprints scanned electronically, and then they channel those fingerprints to the FBI directly. The second difference is that the results are going to be sent to you as the student via a secure email. At that point, you can then forward them to your nursing advisor. Okay. If you choose this option, like I said, do not purchase them through Complio. They're two different companies. And really, the simple difference is if you want to go to your police department and get your fingerprints ink rolled, you can do it through Complio. If you prefer doing them electronically, live scan, you would go through FieldPrint. The time difference between the two, there really isn't one. They both take about the same amount of time. And then the results come a little bit different as well. With Complio, they're automatically uploaded to your account. With FieldPrint, you would get the results and then send them to us. Okay. So some tips for completing all of the Complio requirements, not just the FBI fingerprinting. Know your deadlines and start early. So as soon as you get that approval email from your advisor, I tell students to, make sure you set up your Complio account, review what's needed. It's not hard to complete the Complio requirements, but it is time consuming. There might be some, a couple of visits back and forth to your healthcare provider, so it can be difficult to arrange those sometimes, and you need to make sure that you're not waiting till the last minute. FBI fingerprinting, your health history and physical exam cannot be completed more than 6 months prior to the practicum start date. So if you started a new job 8 months ago and you had to have fingerprinting done then, unfortunately we cannot use it, and you would have to go get them redone because it has to be within 6 months of your start date. And that's due to a number of the agreements that we have with facilities that require that. In addition, MMR, hepatitis B, and varicella, they require proof of serological immunity within 12 months of your practicum start date. So if you've never had titers drawn, or you had titers drawn 10 years ago, you will need to have your healthcare provider order new ones, and you'd have to go have them drawn at a lab. For students that were our BSN degree students as well, there's a chance that you had to have a Complio account prior to for the public health nursing course. If that's the case, you do not have to create a new account, you just have to change your subscription. So the customer service representatives at Complio can help you with that, or you can always reach out to myself or Carol, and we can put you in touch with someone that can change your subscription for you. So the other practicum requirement that we briefly discussed before, you do need to have an updated current Google MSN e-portfolio, okay, when you declare for your practicum. Your e-portfolio must contain graded documents from all courses, excluding the practicum, of course, because you haven't taken them yet, when the Part B form is submitted. Okay, so the graded documents might be a bit of a change for some of you that have been with us for a little while. It was never a requirement to have the graded documents, but we have put out notices to students now for quite a number of terms that what goes in your e-portfolio should be the graded versions. So any courses that you still have access to in terms of your, within your Moodle account, and of course any documents going forward should all be the graded versions that you put in there. Okay. Again, for those of you that might have been with us for a while, if you created your e-portfolio prior to May 2016 and haven't tried to access it since, there is a workaround. We did migrate from Thomas Edison State College to university, so I can send you the instructions for you to access your prior e-portfolio. We do have e-portfolio guidelines and a rubric right on our e-portfolio page. I always encourage students to take a look at it early on in their academic career, as well as often. As you're uploading your documents into your e-portfolio, it's always helpful to have the rubric with you to make sure that you're putting in what needs to be put into your e-portfolio. And we can't say this enough, but an incomplete e-portfolio will delay your practicum. And the reason for that is that the practicum is very, very busy. So in addition to your regular life responsibilities now, you're also doing the online portion of the course, and now you're also doing on-ground hours with your preceptor. In your last practicum course, kind of in that second 3-month term, you will be submitting a finalized e-portfolio. It's usually due about 6 weeks into the term. So it can be a lot to juggle all of those things, plus if you have to try to find all these documents for your e-portfolio and finish all these final papers that are due with the e-portfolio. So we found that students are much more successful if their e-portfolios are up to date and organized prior to going into the practicum. So it really is just a benefit to you to have this all organized prior to starting your practicum, because we essentially want you to be successful once you've started. And just a couple things about accessing your artifacts. Moodle Access is currently open 9 months after completion of the course. So if you haven't been saving and backing up your documents, your Moodle courses will disappear after 9 months. So anything you have access to now that you didn't already save, I would go back in and again, back up. If you took any courses prior to July of 2013, those were completed in Blackboard. We no longer have access to anything in Blackboard. So in that case, speak with your advisor, and we'll talk to you about how you can essentially document those assignments that you may no longer have. And then, of course, keep copies of all your graded assignments and grading rubrics on a flash drive, external hard drive. Put them into your e-portfolio right away. Email them to yourself if you don't have some of these other options, just so you have them somewhere other than your hard drive. We do not retain copies of anything in the School of Nursing, so we would not be able to access them for you if something were to get lost. As I mentioned, the final e-portfolio is due in your second practicum course, and it's a refined version of what you've been creating all along. Ultimately, your three graded assignment, your best artifacts, with the grading rubrics or the track changes document should be present for each outcome. As you get closer to the end of the program, you'll also be adding 2-page reflective narratives to each MSN outcome. And this is broken down in the grading rubric that's available to you at any point. In addition, we also present an informational webinar on a quarterly basis. We basically review the rubric, but it's really there for you to ask questions. So if you need clarification as you're approaching those last practicum courses related to the e-portfolio. And we typically post announcements in your courses when those webinars are available. All right, so student resources, of course, myself and Carol will be the first people that you'd want to kind of touch base with if you're having any problems or you have any questions. Your education coordinators on site at your practicum facility can be of assistance as well. Your preceptor, once your practicum starts, will be a good resource, as well as your online mentor, too. Once the practicum course starts, you'll be speaking with your mentor quite frequently about your project, the progress of your project. Should you have any questions about meeting our requirements, there really would be the people to go to as well. And lastly, our technology consultant, Brandy Granette, Dr. Brandy Granette. She, many of you might already know her if you're far along in the program. But essentially, she's a great resource for the e-portfolio. So if you need additional help accessing, uploading your documents, anything technology related to your e-portfolio, she's a great resource as well. If you experience any problems, changes, or disruptions during the preparation for the practicum or during the practicum itself, once you're in the practicum, you should notify your course mentor and then reach out to your advisor. If it's prior to the practicum starting, then you would want to start with your advisor as well. So if anything happens, if your preceptor resigns, gets a new position, who knows what. Just let us know, and we'll work with you to find a new placement if needed. Once you've declared for your practicum, so once you've sent in that Part A form telling us where you're going and who you're going with, all of our screening sheets get returned to you from the MSN Practicum email address. And the reason we do this is just to make it easier to track which students have declared and where they are in the process. So just make sure that you add this email address to your safe list. So if you submitted your Part A form, you haven't heard back in a while, just make sure you're checking into your junk mail or wherever your clutter emails might go to see if you received anything from us. Or just reach out to your advisor and we can clarify for you where we are in the process. Okay, as always, gradnursing@tesu.edu. If you don't have direct access to Carol or myself at this point, if you don't have our direct emails, although most of you probably do, you can always use the grad nursing email to get in touch with us, and then we'll forward it to the appropriate advisor. To make your advising appointments, that's done online using our online appointment desk. Okay, and you can schedule those as frequently as you'd like. Usually our calendars are open for 2 weeks in like 2-week intervals, but typically we're also happy to speak to students even if you don't have a scheduled appointment. So feel free to give us a call, email us, and we'll work something out directly with you as well. Okay, so for those of you that are listening to this live, If you'd like to type in any questions, you can within your questions email box or on the dashboard. If you're listening to this as a recorded, again, you can go ahead and send any general questions you have to the grad nursing box or reach out to your advisor. All right, well, I thank you all for listening to this webinar, and we wish you the best of luck. Take care.